very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to today's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Toivo Njabela, your host. Let's have a look at some of the headlines in Tuesday's Namibian Sun. Putin's war will worsen food security in Africa, including Namibia. That is regarding the situation in Ukraine, that we have already started feeling the pinch of some of the escalating conflict. $15 million teachers housing project is still not completed. That is in the two Kavango regions. A massive injection was made, but to date, those structures cannot be occupied as it appears in that photo. And then, of course, still in Kavango, the farmers there want their cattle back into the Bwabwata National Park. Government obviously says they must be driven out across the country, but farmers in that area think it is an unfair request. Tonight on the show, we are joined by Theo Nghitila. He's the Executive Director in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Tourism, as well as virtually by Karl Ammann, who is an internationally renowned wildlife trafficking investigator. He is speaking to us from Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya. Gentlemen, thank you very much for making time. I'll start with you, Mr. Nghitila. We want to talk about, obviously, the issue of the elephants that were auctioned recently by government, and I think a lot of people understood the whole issue differently. And I know that you addressed the press last week, but give us a sense of, in not so many words, what is it that really transpired as far as this auction is concerned?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity and a very good afternoon. In fact, the government of Namibia has put into auction some elephants, which were sourced from hotspots, what we call hotspot area across the country, where we are really witnessing a lot of human-wildlife conflict in those areas. And also the area we have been monitoring over the years. So that prompted the government to move and take a decision to take some of these elephants. And we conducted a public auction. It was a very open, transparent process. We put a bid in December 3rd, 2020, that closed on 29 January 2021. So we expect everyone who is interested to bid, and obviously we have to follow all the procurement process as outlined within Namibian laws. This auction was done also following our own national conservation policies, and also within the framework of CITES. So there is nothing untoward about it.
There's nothing untoward about it. Karl, you recently investigated, because of course, like Theo here says, they auctioned to interested parties, and there's one particular party that sold his elephants further to, I think, the United Arab Emirates, and you took a bit of interest in that. What can you tell us about that particular element of this process?
Yeah, first of all, having me, yes, I have been working on this topic now for quite a few years. Essentially, it's a documentary film I'm doing. It started trafficking or trading of elephants from Laos to China, which were also cited as one listed species, and which all financial issues which we in the end felt we should query, in a sense that the average sold in Laos for about $50,000-$60,000. By the time the end consumer bought it in China, the price was $500,000 to $600,000. So we felt that was unproportional profit for the dealers and traffic involved. Then we followed the deal which was done between Zimbabwe and China in 2019. There were some 30 elephants which went to China, and we followed that up right into China. We managed to get internal documents showing that the Chinese buyer had paid $125,000 per elephant. Again, Zimbabwe had declared an excess of $30,000, so again $95,000 going into commissions, incentives. Questionable if it went into bribes, or if there's no clear evidence on that front, but clearly a huge markup with people making big money in the process, in a man, and the producer, in this case Zimbabwe, ending up with a fraction of the total price which was fetched at the other end. Now, when we looked at the Namibian exports to the UAE, mainly to Sharjah and Al Ain, we got pretty good information at the UAE end of the total price package of 50 million elephants. 2 were born in the meantime, so now 22. But the original package was supposedly 20 elephants for dollars, negotiated by a South African dealer who had in the past sold elephants to Dubai as well, at $100,000 an elephant. Looking at the statements, the official statements from the Namibian authority, clearly the auction was done in a regulatory fashion, but clearly which knew that getting elephant meant they could make a hell of a lot of profit at the end of the day. And that seems to be what has happened, and it seems that therefore Namibia and the people of the Namibia are the big losers. If an average elephant $7,000 at the auction, and in the end fetched $20,000-$30,000 or more, even in this case at the UAE end, then somebody cashed in a major way. And I know their expenses with the transport cost for the charter flight, calculated feeding and these animals and veterinary care for 3-4 months quarantine, the building of the, all that we took into consideration, but there were still hundreds of thousands of profit middleman. And my question is, why do African governments sell their national assets for what is essentially peanuts, and the people who make the big benefit are the men?
Yeah. Thank you, Karl, for that elaborate response. There's a bit of network issues there, but we get the picture of what you're saying. Mr. Nghitila, when the Namibian government determined the offset prices for this auction, what was the considerations? Because the outcry now, I mean, Karl there says they have absolutely no issue with the regulatory compliance of how you did it, but that you massively undersold these elephants.
Thank you very much. We had put a reserve price, which was put at 75,000 Namibian dollars.
Yeah.
Most of the offers that we have been receiving, some of them even offer less than that. So that already gives you some indication how much people were prepared to pay for one elephant. So we invite everybody who has resource to do so, and that they put their bid in a sealed envelope or the proposal. So I think in our selection process, we selected the highest offer. And of course, this offer also is subject to the submission of appropriate import permit. What is important here, and I needed to state this, was this auction or trade or transaction, was it done within the existing legal framework? Yes, we tick that. Is this proceed going to be reinvested back into conservation? Yes, this is not the money that is pocketed by a person. It's the money that is deposited into a game product trust fund, and that is the money that is going directly to be reinvested into the conservation efforts. We are talking of lessening human-wildlife incident in those hotspots where these elephants are sourced. So these are two major considerations that are so important to us. Obviously, this auction has been opened by anybody, and it has been running over a month. We expect people to really submit meaningful offer. And obviously, within our procurement procedures, we have to select the highest and the most responsive in terms of all the required permits. So these are so important to us. Just recently concluded CITES standing committee that took place in France. No country is condemning Namibia when it comes to this sale of these elephants, because it's done under the existing CITES framework. We used Appendix 1 and Article 3 of that appendix. So I don't really see a major issue here. This is it's also demonstrated that it's a sovereignty country as Namibia, and we have the right of use of our natural resources. And this is very much provided for in our national constitution. It's also a learning process for us. We do acknowledge we may have lost, we may have not driven maximum or optimum profit from this transaction. But this is how the open market works.
I hear you. Karl, I'm sure you followed that response by Theo. Do you have something to say back to just maybe to react to what he said?
Yeah, Mr. Theo, I mean, 2 points. One, you mentioned that obviously the parties buying had to be in possession of the relevant port permits, meaning it was anticipated buyers were going to be people who would export the animals which imported somewhere, and we both know that the site import permit for the export permit. So the permit was supposedly issued by the United Arab Emirates, but that's generally several months in advance, and generally a CITES import permit or export permit is valid only for 6 months. In September, the import have had to be issued mid last year, to be valid for this export, which would have expired by now. But irrespective of that, the fact is this was a long planned process as far as the buyers were concerned. They knew they had offers from these buyers in the Middle East. They knew 4 elephants from Zimbabwe to Dubai in 2018 had gone for $100 an animal, and they probably had a very good idea what the bid price would be for them to still make a huge profit, but I have made that point before. So I just feel, as I said, it's a pity that in countries like Zimbabwe and undersell assets like elephants. I'm quoting the example of the Chinese as far as renting out their pandas. They have never sold a panda. They're renting them out at $1 million to a source of fuck. The animal remains the property of China. Any offspring born belongs to China. China can if there's any problem with the keeping or the welfare of the animal, they can recall the animal whenever they want. And they said $1 million annually changes hands. Now, that's then a lot of money to invest in conservation, and that seems to work well. So, in relationship to these elephants, I was visiting the two parks where they're going to last week. I was in Alain. It's $40 to enter for a drive-through setup. Obviously, the elephants weren't on display yet. The elephants are housed in an area of the park which is called Niger Valley, standing for Niger, the country in northern Africa. So I don't know, it will only have your elephants on display in this section of the safari park called Niger Valley. I have no idea. But the whole message of this safari park is you no longer need to go to Africa. We have imported to be planted. It's all a setting where you have a drive-through safari, just like in Africa. So why go on the safari to Africa when you can come to Sharjah, which is very easy to get, convenient, 5-star hotels, all that, and which I think is counterproductive in tourism and in Africa. These are some aspects taken into consideration when this process was established, but I think it's counterproductive to many of the interests of the African countries involved in these sales.
Now, Theo, what we understand, and correct me if I didn't get that correctly, is that there are more elephants on auction. I think the total that you guys went to auction in total is 170. Now, you also seem to admit that certain elements of what has transpired could have been done better. For the remaining elephants, do you intend then to do things differently, or is it already cast in a stone so much that you cannot change anything anymore?
For the remaining 20 that are still, we need to conclude the agreement.
Yeah.
So
not these ones. Of course, we know that there's one bidder who is yet to pay.
Yes,
we are
yes,
told.
yes.
But apart from these ones, I thought there were more to be still. Yeah.
Yes, that is. I think we are learning as we go.
Yeah.
We went to get the best for our people.
Yes.
As I have indicated, these are resources mostly taken from those farmers.
Yeah.
So we really want the best from these resources. We are saying we have, as a government, we have established Game Product Trust Fund, and the debt fund, the funds that are there is used exclusively for the reinvestment in conservation. So we, as a facilitator, as a national authority, which is the ministry, and as CITES, we are there to ensure that everything is done within the framework of the law, in the first place. Secondly, we will obviously wish to optimize maximum benefits accrued from these natural resources. It's not something that we should dish out at a cheap price. No, that's not our intention. We'll really try to get best out of it. The middleman issue, when we put out of the tender, we expect even those zoos or whoever to bid directly, not to wait to go through the middleman. So when we could not get a proposal from them, we cannot now go and reach out to them, can you buy our elephant? That is different. Then there was no need for you to go for the auction. So that defends the whole principle of going out into public open bidding. So that is something that people really should understand. But if there will be a party or a partner who will offer us big money, then we will go for that.
Indeed. So before I go back to Karl, what is the feeling within the ministry amidst all these headlines? Do you feel, I mean, for example, people are talking about, I think the total that could be accrued from the current process is only about under 7 million Namibian dollars. If it was 7 million US dollars, that would have been a different story. But now this one seems really, really small. What is the attitude within the ministry as far as that is concerned, and also in shaping the way things must be done going forward?
I tell you earlier, in the past we used to have a maximum offer of 22,000 Namibian dollars per head, per one elephant. So that was, the price of animal also fluctuates depending on which year or what time.
Yeah.
So as we were getting offer of less than 22,000, that's why we agreed to put a minimum threshold, which in this case was 75. And we get a good response from that.
Yeah.
Imagine now you would have put a minimum of 100,000 for instance. So maybe the response would have not been so responsive. So I think we would really wish to see maximum offer as per the elephant can give. And as I have indicated, it is an auction. Whoever give you the highest, you go for that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but we probably will explore other ways, as your colleague on the other terminal has indicated. There are many ways to make this arrangement when it comes to this type of transaction. We are open. We will look into those possibilities.
Indeed.
We don't want to lose our resources or to give away our resources. These resources have lived with our community for such a long time. And when we are talking of now sending them away, it's also a matter of emotion.
Yes.
But this is also part of our management. When you have access of the resources as part of your management, in managing this resource, you need funds.
I hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. So now, Karl, Theo here just said that you need funds, and which reminds me of the story that Namibian Sun, the newspaper that I edit, published last week, and you were quoted in that story saying that, if I remember correctly, that someone made about 14 million from this issue. Okay, that is now in Namibian dollars, of course. And 14 million is actually double of what our government got here. But give me a sense, Karl, maybe of what is it that Namibia can do for or with the stockpiles of elephant tusks that we have here. I mean, ivory, sorry. What are the global best practices to deal with these stockpiles?
Yeah, I mean, you know how the world feels about elephants and what's happening in terms of poaching. Last 2 days, I know Southern Africa hasn't got the problem which has affected most of Central America, but nevertheless, we know that elephant populations on the continent have collapsed. You know, as such, the public and the world feels strongly about elephants collapsing population. That a lot of the population had to do with poaching by the demand for ivory. The message seems to have gotten it in China, to some extent Vietnam, Thailand, maybe not so much in Japan, in the consumer countries, that they maybe have responsibility sure that the elephants don't get wiped from the continent in the context of the demand for their ivory. I know Southern Africa and these countries somewhat, but these should ivory be put in the market which drive demand. I mean, other countries burned their ivory. Kenya has, Tanzania has also done it. Sri Lanka has done it. Even China has burned ivory and so on. I think there seems to be a return for gestures in a sense that donor funding, collaboration and so on, governments best to assist African governments who want to look at text. Relocating elephants in Africa is done very regularly. That means if you had overpopulation or a population which was troublesome in Namibia, I'm sure there would have been donors which would probably have paid the same amount that these people who translocate these elephants to somewhere in Namibia where they were. I would be surprised if there would be no donors out there willing to pick this up at the prices quoted. So there are other options rather than to commercialize it. The same goes for ivory. As I said, if you approach some donor governments and said, okay, we're willing to take a stand for ivory too, but what compensation can we get in terms of donor funding for conservation long term? And maybe that's the better way to go. But to try to sell the ivory in the international market will no longer be easy. China is no longer going to buy. Most of the countries in Southeast Asia will have to consider a name and shame component if they're going to have blamed for encouraging poaching and so on. So I doubt that there will be a market future for this ivory.
Yeah, indeed. Karl, in the interest of time, and Theo, thank you very much for your time. We have a bit of connection issues, but I think we have a sense of the conversation. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Wonderful. That was the show for tonight. Thank you for watching.
Have you received a loan from NASFAF? NASFAF loan is the same as any other loan. It must be paid and settled. NASFAF has a set of guidelines on how you can repay your loan and become debt-free. Therefore, it is important that you, a former beneficiary and a responsible Namibian, show your patriotism by helping pay back your loan and thus helping NASFAF become a revolving fund for the benefit of future potential students. By failing to pay back your NASFAF loan, you risk being blacklisted or having a court order against you. So arrange with the fund to pay back your loan today. For more information on how you can repay your loan, visit our website at www.nasfaf.na or visit our Facebook page or Twitter. Do the right thing and #paybackthemoney.